So today I'm talking about There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, and this is an incredibly beautifully written book. I do, read a good mix. I love fantasy and I want to start reading a bit more fantasy because I've been reading off fantasy quite a bit. But I like to mix it up with different types of books, and because I think it expands your ideas and expands, if you just always read the same sort of stuff, I don't know, how do you grow, how do you challenge your thoughts? And I think that's one of the key essentials of reading. And Elif, you cannot go wrong picking her books. She's this incredibly beautifully well written writer, and she really takes you into new worlds. And this book, There Are Rivers in the Sky, it centers around a drop of water that travels through time and affects the lives of three people. It centers around Nineveh, ancient Nineveh, in the Assyrian Empire, and the Epic of Gilgamesh. And so it sort of begins with Ashurbanipal, I hope I've said that correct, and the scholarly king, as he was known, or the like, but also a very brutal dictator, and the ancient city of Nineveh and the Lamassus and all that. And so then it goes to Arthur, of the king of the sewers and scums, who's born on the River Thames, and the same drop of water that falls on King Ashurbanipal basically travels through time as water shifts and evaporates and comes down and up and down and into a snowflake that falls upon Arthur's tongue as he's born. And he is a unique young man born in the slums of England around Dickens' time, and to a mother who's struggling with mental illness and a father who's an alcoholic and a brute. And so, but there's this uniqueness about his incredible memory. And excuse my my phone just beeped. And it also follows Zelika in sort of 2018 London, I believe. I think I've got that time right, frame right. Who's is a scientist and studies water, hydrologist, I believe it's called, and she's got family ties back to that time. Her uncle's a collector of periods of ancient Nineveh and the Epic of Gilgamesh. I'm really struggling with that on my tongue. And so basically we follow her through a divorce and trying to pick her life back together. And she's also lost her parents when she was young, and I won't explain that one because I try not to do the spoilers, and that's really the hard part of doing these reviews is trying not to do spoilers. So I won't tell you how her parents passed, but she's basically raised by her uncle and auntie, and so they're immigrants into England, and how they view and see the world, of course, it shapes her, and that's what Elif does too. As a Turkish woman who's I spent time in the Netherlands, I believe, before settling in England, and I hope if I'm wrong about that, please forgive me. But that's as I understand her experience. She's this brilliantly well travelled, and she takes you into these worlds and these stories and expands upon it and really shows you that. And then the third frame, or the third plot of this water flow of this brilliant story, is Nara, who's a Yazidi woman. And I heard of the name Yazidis, but it's not something I knew really anything about. And they're a group of people that were, I guess, believed to be devil worshippers because they believed in God in a sort of different way to the popularity of Christianity and Islam that's big in that part of the world. And they were roots back to ancient times, and they're sort of scattered in Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, and her time frame is around that 2014, I think. But also, her grandma's grandma has a connection to Arthur. So there's these brilliant connections of how she puts them through together, and it's the River Tigris sort of is the one that holds this frame together. So it's very water-centric, this story. And Elif just twists it and winds it, as a river flows. She winds these plots together and these ancient histories and these modern times and that in this perfect story, and she does it so well, how she connects the stories, and that she does take a little bit of liberty with the story. And I love that, like you read the author's notes at the end, which I love to do in historical books when I do read a historical book, so they can tell you what they did a little bit different, a little bit thing, and then I can explain things. And her explanation on some of the stuff. Arthur of the Sewers and Slum is a fictionalized version of a man who was born of poverty in England, who did decipher the epics, the stone tablets or the clay tablets they found out of Nineveh, and went on to renown. And so it does have him in it, and there's other incidents in the book with deaths and things like that are things that sort of semi-happen or happen just quietly obscured, just as she fictionalized it and just made it a little bit more her own and gave her a bit more license to really take you on that beautiful journey of an incredible story. The Yazidis, their story is a real tragic one, and she really brings that up in this novel about ISIS and the goings on there. They've been persecuted throughout the generations. Back in the time, they were persecuted by the Ottomans, they were persecuted by Saddam Hussein in the Iraqs, and then they were persecuted by the ISIS. And it's even in the author's notes, it talks about a lot of these Yazidi women who have been forced into slavery, and it's one of those tragic things of humanity that we still do, and we still don't learn. We still attack and destroy. We have such an abundance of ability to create and look after all humans, no matter what face, religion, colours, sexual orientation, anything. We've got it all here in our fingertips. We could have it, we could create it, and there's just this greed and this mistrust sown by this greed and this lack of understanding that we destroy. And the Yazidis are still women that are suffering, even though ISIS has been abandoned. There's a large number of women that are unaccounted for. So that Elif doesn't write light and fluffy, and I think that's another thing I love about her books. She really makes you think. She really opens your heart to different things. Oh my God, I should have turned my phone on silent. And it's the nature of what she does. She draws you into these hard and difficult conversations and difficult thoughts. And I think she opens you up to compassion and understanding. And I certainly hope other people feel that way. That's like her books touch me in that way, and I love that so much. And then she is just her way with words is so beautiful, and it is so brilliant. Like, as a writer, I don't feel fit to lick her boots like what she does. Someone gave me a compliment. Oh no, she commented that I have a way with words. A co-worker the other day in the office, and I don't think that was a compliment. I'm not going to read give you the context of why she said that to me. But yeah, I don't think it was a compliment. My way with words, but Elif is something else. The way she draws you into this thing, and I'm going to read something, because we know I'm just so brilliant at reading other people's stuff aloud. But this is, what writers and poets and songsmiths and lyricsmiths understand. Words are like birds, says Mr. Bradbury. When you publish books, you are setting caged birds free. They can go wherever they please. They can fly over the highest walls and across the vast distance, settling in the mansions of the gentry, in the farmsteads, and in the labourers' cottages alike. You never know whom those words will reach, whose hearts will succumb to their sweet songs. How beautiful is that? Like, that's just a fragment. You could pick so many things to talk about and pinpoint in her writing. But that's what literature should be. That's what writing and storytelling should be. I know not everyone's Elif Shafak. You know, we need the J.K. Rowlings, we need the George R. Martins, the Stephen Kings, and you know, the Leanne Moriartys, and you know, the Mills and Boons, because that's people's appetites, people's taste. So there's at different levels for everyone. There's different stories for everyone, but I think you should always read a mix, and I certainly try to. But all words, all literature, all storytelling is important, and Elif probably knows that better than most. All writers, like I said, all writers, poets, and lyric smiths understand the power of words, but Elif does so in such a beautiful way. I genuinely love this book. I don't want to give away too much at the end, but yeah, as to watch Arthur's rise, you know, as he fights his way out to poverty and begins to decipher the conifer of the Assyrian language, like the lines and the dashes and the Epic of Gilgamesh. I've tripped over that 4 times today. Yeah, it's really beautiful, and that's apparently there was a George Smythe, or you know, I probably got that one wrong, who did it, and it's very similar sort of lifetime and time frame of how he did it, come from nowhere, and you know, being able to go to this ancient Nineveh and discover and connect all these worlds, and then mix it up with, you know, from a decade ago when horrors and atrocities were going and we're still persecuting people from differences, and then to just a few years ago when people are lost and uncertain of how things happen, and there's a real twist in this story of where we are as people and seeing opportunities and seeing entitlement that, yeah, I don't want to give you the spoiler away from it, but it's how people justify something, and even when you're trying to do the right thing and look after your family, sometimes it can really come at the expense of others, and we see that in society so much. And Elif draws a picture, and she also, you know, there's a big debate about the British Museum and the raping and pillaging of other cultures that they did, and you know, that's sort of addressed here, and this is what books and literature should be. They should challenge our ideas. They should challenge our thoughts. I think too much now we're safe, and people, you know, want to rewrite history books and that because they are offensive or their thing. But that's history. It's what that was. It was maybe not acceptable, maybe not right at the time, but it was what it was at the time. And I think we should never ever compromise on how we're writing stories. You know, even if you're offended, that's okay to be offended. Sometimes you're meant to be offended, but this happened, you know, and this story, even though it's a fictionalized version of certain events, they still happen, even if it's pure fiction and it's hard and gritty. You know, the things like that are happening in our life. You know, we should be able to tell them stories. And yeah, Elif, if you can't read this and fall in love with her beautiful words and challenge your thoughts, I'd be very surprised. Absolute brilliant book. I've got a couple more of her books, not knowing when I will read them, but I will definitely, she's someone I will read everything she's written if I can. I loved her books. I loved this book. This is the second book of hers I've read. Probably like the other one slightly better, but still, There Are Rivers in the Sky, Elif Shafak. Absolutely brilliant book. Happy reading, subscribe and follow for more.